Alright, so I was born and raised in Wisconsin, and then growing up, to me, it was fascinating what was going on. You hear about stories about the mob and Al Capone, and in fact, my mother had an uncle that used to run a truck for delivering the illegal booze at the time. And in case you don't know, Chicago is right on the border, the northern border of Illinois, Wisconsin, and Milwaukee is right next. It's like Panama City Beach, and over there across the bridge in Panama City. That's how close they were. Like sister cities. And at the time, I don't know about now, but at the time, Illinois had the death penalty for murder, and what the mobsters would do is cross the Wisconsin border, because Wisconsin had life imprisonment. So if they did get caught, it happened in Wisconsin, so they won't be put to death. So back in 1929, Chicago had a problem. In fact, the tentacles of that problem infested much of the nation around Chicago. The problem had a name, and his name was Al Capone. Capone was a criminal, wicked man who literally ran the city of Chicago. He owned most of the politicians and policemen, and those he couldn't buy, he threatened or had killed. Capone had his mob running prostitution rings throughout the city and sold bootleg liquor worth millions. Then one day, a young Treasury agent and 11 of his hand-picked men decided it was time to declare war on Capone. Years ago, I did a sermonette that there's signs all over. We drive on the right hand. England drives on the left hand when you see the crossing of the hands. In case you didn't know, there's only 12 people that walked on the moon. There was always one circling. So you got the 12 tribes, perhaps. Here we have 12 people going to take on this Al Capone. And if you remember, the name of that young 26-year-old Treasury agent was Eliot Ness. Ness and his team ran continuous raids on Capone's operation and cost the mobster millions in lost revenue. Now, as you can imagine, Capone was not happy and attempted numerous assassination attempts on Ness, and succeeded in killing one of Ness's closest friends. But before Al Capone took out a contract on the Treasury agent, he decided a softer approach. At the time, Ness was making $2,800 a year. This was back in '29. An envelope containing $2,000 inside, the messenger made it clear that this would be his weekly salary if he would just lay off Capone. Ness put the money back in the envelope and sent it and the messenger back to Capone. Then he called a press conference. Ness told the assembled newspaper men all about Capone's attempted bribe, and made it clear how much contempt he had for the man who had offered it. The next day, the headlines read, "Ness and his men are untouchable." And so began the legend of Eliot Ness and his untouchables. Now, in a day of corrupt officials and policemen who were on the take, Ness and his untouchables became heroes. They were righteous men who could not be bought. They were upright men of integrity who fought evil and corruption. They were men of legend. In Proverbs 11, verse 1, "A false balance is an abomination to Yahweh, but a just weight is his delight. When pride comes, then comes shame, but with the lowly is wisdom. The integrity of the upright shall guide them, but the perverseness of transgressors shall destroy them. Riches profit not in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death. The righteousness of of the perfect shall direct his way, but the wicked shall fall by his own wickedness. The righteousness of the upright shall deliver them, but the transgressors shall be taken in their own naughtiness. When the wicked man dies, his expectation shall perish, and the hope of unjust men perishes. The righteous is delivered out of trouble, and the wicked comes in his stead. A hypocrite with his mouth destroys his neighbor, but through knowledge shall the just be delivered. When it goes well with the righteous, the city rejoices, and when the wicked perish, there is shouting. By the blessings of the upright, the city is exalted, but it is overthrown by the mouth of the wicked. He that is void of wisdom despises his neighbor, but a man of understanding holds his peace. A talebearer reveals secrets, but he that is of a faithful spirit conceals the matter. Where no counsel is, the people fail, but in the multitude of counselors there is safety. He that is surety for a stranger shall smart for it, and he that hates suretyship is sure. A gracious woman retaineth honor, and strong men retain riches. The merciful man does good to his own soul, but he that is cruel troubles his own flesh. The wicked works a deceitful work, but to him that sows righteousness shall be a sure reward. As righteousness tends to life, so he that pursues evil pursues it to his own death. They that are of a forward heart are abomination to Yahweh, but such as are the upright in their way are his delight. Though hand in hand, the wicked shall not be unpunished, but the seed of the righteous shall be delivered. As a jewel of gold in a swine's snout, so is a fair woman which is without discretion. The desire of the righteous is only good, but the expectation of the wicked is wrath. There is that scatters and yet increases. There is that withholds more than is meet, but it tends to poverty. The liberal soul shall be made fat, and he that waters shall be watered also himself. He that withholds corn, the people shall curse him, but blessing shall be upon the head of him that sells it. He that diligently seeks good procureth favor, but he that seeks mischief, it shall come unto him. He that trusts in his riches shall fall, but the righteous shall flourish as a branch. He that troubles his own house shall inherit the wind, and the fool shall be servant to the wise of heart. The fruit of the righteous is a tree of life, and he that wins souls is wise. Behold, the righteous shall be recompensed in the earth, much more the wicked and the sinner. In Proverbs 11, Yahweh says he is calling for his people to be men and women of legend. He is calling us to be people known for our integrity, people who can't be bought, people who stand for righteousness in a land that is filled with evil and corruption. Micah 6 verse 8, He has showed thee, O man, what is good, and what does Yahweh require of you? But to do justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy Elohim. So what Yahweh says he expects from us is righteousness, mercy, and a humble spirit. He calls us to be legends in our world. And so here in Proverbs 11, Yahweh tells us what a righteous person looks like. As Yahweh often did in the book of Proverbs, Yahweh draws a contrast between the righteous and the wicked. In verse 3 of Proverbs 11, the integrity of the upright shall guide them, but the perverseness of transgressors shall destroy them. Verse 5, the righteous righteousness of the perfect shall direct his way, but the wicked shall fall by his own wickedness. In verse 6, the righteousness of the upright shall deliver them, but transgressors shall be taken in their own naughtiness. In verse 8, the righteous is delivered out of trouble, and the wicked comes in his stead. In verse 9, the hypocrite with his mouth destroys his neighbors, but through knowledge shall the just be delivered. In verse 10, when it goes well with the righteous, the city rejoices, and when the wicked perish, there is shouting. In verse 11, by the blessings of the upright, the city is exalted, but it is overthrown by the mouth of the wicked. Did you see the pattern here? Yahweh is saying, these people are righteous, these aren't. These folks have integrity, these folks don't. Yahweh loves the good guys, and he despises the other. The upright he protects and honors, but the wicked will be trapped and destroyed. Yahweh is making a comparison, and he's telling us, make a choice. Decide what kind of person you are going to be. A while back, there was a nationwide survey asking about the views of unrighteousness. Now, the survey organization didn't put it that way, but what they did was ask people to evaluate what they thought about 8 specific activities: pornography, profanity in public, gambling, gossiping, engaging in sexual intercourse with someone who is not married, seeking revenge against someone, getting drunk, and lying. They found was folks who believe the Bible were the group most likely to follow and embrace morality, while atheists and agnostics were more likely to reject it. Liberals, compared to those who described themselves as conservatives and were often more religious, and were 5 times more likely to participate in unmarried sex, and more than 3 times as likely to view pornography, and more than twice as likely to lie and to get drunk, seek revenge, and gossip. And people associated with faiths other than Christianity were twice as likely as believers to engage in these behaviors. What that said to me was this: those who respected the Elohim of the Bible were more likely to embrace righteousness than those who didn't. To paraphrase a great writer, Dostoevsky, once you remove the God of Scriptures from your life, everything is permissible. Those who reject Yahweh's righteousness do so because it interferes with what they want to do in their lives. It's kind of like the story I once read about a man went to see a psychiatrist. He complained, "I've been doing some bad things, doc, and my conscience is troubling me." The doctor asked, "And you want something that will strengthen your willpower?" The man replied, "Well, no, I was thinking of something that would weaken my conscience. Drunkenness would help." Many people don't want Yahweh's righteousness. They want something that will make them feel better about their own unrighteousness. But Yahweh says that's not going to happen. Yahweh says, I don't care what your excuse is, wrong is wrong. There was a deacon who was committing adultery, and they just let it go. The guy was wealthy, related to the leadership, and he was a likable guy. And when a new preacher refused to go along with their moral apathy, they were appalled and ultimately asked him to leave. In fact, one man even asked, if you were a preacher in San Francisco, you wouldn't preach against homosexuality, would you? And, well, yeah, that's where many of them live. It doesn't matter what sin we're talking about, wrong is wrong, even if everyone else says it's okay. In Exodus 23, verse 2, thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil, neither shalt thou speak in a cause to decline after many to wrest judgment. Do not follow the crowd in doing wrong. Wrong is wrong, even if you don't get caught. In Proverbs 15, verse 3, the eyes of Yahweh are in every place, beholding the evil and the good. You can't possibly do anything that Yahweh doesn't know about. Wrong is wrong, even if it doesn't bother your conscience. The conscience can be trained to accept wrongdoing. You can build up a callous over your heart. Ephesians 4, verse 18 tells us, having the understanding darkened, being alienated from the life of Yahweh through the ignorance that is in them, because of the blindness of their heart. Wrong is wrong. And Yahweh does not accept excuses. Yahweh calls for no. He demands righteousness from his people. In Proverbs 3:33, the curse of Yahweh is in the house of the wicked, but he blesses the habitation of the just. You will be brought down by your own wickedness. In Proverbs 11:5, the righteousness of the perfect shall direct his way, but the wicked shall fall by his own wickedness. Then in verse 6, you'll be trapped by your evil desires. The righteousness of the upright shall deliver them, but transgressors shall be taken in their own naughtiness. And when you die, people will rejoice. In verse 10, when it goes well with the righteous, the city rejoices, and when the wicked perish, there is shouting. But if you choose righteousness, that's a whole different ballgame. Yahweh will bless you. Yahweh will hear your prayers. In Proverbs 15:29, Yahweh is far from the wicked, but he hears the prayer of the righteous. You'll sing and you'll be glad. You'll be happy, a happy person. Proverbs 29:6, in the transgressions of the evil man there is a snare, but the righteous does sing and rejoice. You won't go hungry. In Proverbs 10, verse 3, Yahweh will not suffer the soul of the righteous to famish, but he casts away the substance of the wicked. You might get knocked down 7 times, but each time you get back up again. In Proverbs 24:16, for the just man falls 7 times and rises up again, but the wicked shall fall into mischief. So Yahweh calls his people to righteousness. But there's a fly in the ointment. There's a problem we run into when we strive to be righteous. Romans 3, verse 10 says, there is no one righteous, not even one. Job 9:2 agrees. How can a mortal be righteous before Yahweh? The fly in the ointment is no one is righteous before Yahweh. We've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of Elohim. So let me see if I got this right. Yahweh wants me to be righteous. I want to be righteous, but I can't be righteous because no one is ever righteous. So if I can't be righteous, why would Yahweh demand it of me? Why? Because Yahweh sets the bar high. He says that this is what we are aiming for. He's not saying to you, all right, going to reach it, but it's your objective. You're going to touch the bar now and again, but there's no way you will constantly be able to attain that goal in your life. Someone put it this way: before I came to Messiah, I practiced sin and committed acts of righteousness. In other words, before he became a believer, he lived for himself. Yahweh's opinion didn't matter to him. If he wanted to do it, he did it. Sin was a way of life for him. But he saw himself as being a nice guy, and so he would occasionally do nice things, because that was what most people do. So this person said, before I came to Messiah, I practiced sin and committed acts of righteousness. Then he said, now I practice righteousness and commit acts of sin. In other words, now that he belongs to Yeshua, he lives to please him, but he's realistic enough to realize that he still messes up, he falls short, he sins, but that is no longer the goal of his life. Now, as I was pondering this issue of our imperfect righteousness, I was trying to think of some way to illustrate this truth. Then I came upon this thought. How many of you have ever watched a high school baseball game? Let's say we take them to Milwaukee and have them face off against the Milwaukee Brewers. How do you think they would do? They'd probably lose, because they're high schoolers. They can't throw a ball as hard and as fast as a big league pitcher. They can't run as fast as the professionals can. They can't hit a baseball as far as the pros do. They don't have the same skills in the infield or in the outfield. They don't belong on the same field with the Brewers. So if they wouldn't stand a chance of beating the Milwaukee Brewers, why should they ever bother to play baseball? They're not as good as those professionals, big leaguers, so why even play the game? Of course, that's not how people think, especially in their high school coaches. Their coaches don't care if their players aren't as good as the professionals. All they want from their boys is the best each of them can give. And if those young players don't give their best, they'll be doing laps. The Bible is telling us we are not in the same league with Yahweh. You and I will never be as righteous as Yahweh. As Job says, how can a mortal be righteous before Elohim? We're not on the same playing field as Yahweh is. We don't have bragging rights to say we've been righteous enough to deserve to be on his team. That's why in Ephesians 2 tells us in verse 3, among whom also we all had our conversations in time past in the lust of our flesh, fulfilling the desires of the flesh and of the mind, and were by nature the children of wrath, even as others. But Yahweh, who is rich in mercy, for his great love, wherewith he loved us, even when we were dead in sin, has quickened us together with Messiah. By grace you are saved. Not by works, lest any man should boast. So, not righteous enough to be saved, but if that's true, how could I possibly make it into Yahweh's kingdom? In 2 Corinthians 5:21, for he has made him to be sin for us, who knew no sin, that we might be made the righteousness of Elohim in him. Yahweh made him who had no sin, Yeshua, to be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of Yahweh. You see, when I'm clothed with Yeshua, his righteousness compensates for what I lack. One man explained it this way: if all the Christians had is $5 and God wants 10, God supplies the other 5 for him. If the Christian had 7, God supplies the remaining 3. God makes up the difference for what I lack in righteousness. It's kind of like this. Let's say a high school player gets a chance to play for the Brewers. There's 2 outs. The bases are loaded, and our young man is up to bat. On the mound is one of the best professional pitchers in the league, and our boy doesn't stand a chance, and he knows it. Suddenly, the coach calls timeout. He pulls our boy aside and puts in a pinch hitter in his place, a fabled home run hitter. The pitcher goes into the windup, the ball streaks towards the plate, the batter swings and is out of there. The ball flies high and true and goes off right field fence for a grand slam home run. The coach says to you, boy, now you run around the bases. Just make sure you touch all the bases. That's all you have to do. Philippians 9 says, I don't have a righteousness of my own that comes from the law, but that which is through faith in Messiah. The righteousness that comes from Yahweh is by faith. And be found in him, not having my own righteousness which is of the law, but that which is through the faith of Messiah, that righteousness which is of Elohim by faith. And 2 Corinthians 5:1 puts it, for he has made him to be sin for us, who knew no sin, that we might be made the righteousness of Elohim in him. So how do I get into Yeshua? So I lay hold of his righteousness. In Galatians 3:26, for you are all the children of Yahweh by faith in Messiah Yeshua. Verse 27, for as many as you as have been baptized into Messiah have put on Messiah. You see, when you and I believe that Yeshua is the Son of Yahweh, and we are baptized into Messiah, we suited up for his team. When that happened, Yahweh called us to live lives dedicated to righteousness. His way of life found in the Bible. But in the righteous life we strive for, we need to realize that we will not get into heaven by our righteousness, but by his. Yahweh bless.